Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you guys are in the world. My name is John, and today we're going to talk about our editorial team's top 5 marketing discoveries of 2015, and we're going to transfer those discoveries into actionable takeaways that you can use as soon as you go back into the work grind mode. And this is how we're going to do it. So as you can see in the screen, we've got 5 discoveries that we're going to go through, and the great thing is we've got 5 key experiments that we're going to use to illustrate those discoveries. Those aren't the only experiments behind the discovery, but they're probably the best and the most recent for actually illustrating what we've learned in the last year. We're going to cross-reference those with some other case studies, and we're going to have some summary key points for you. So you can imagine, and actually before we get into it, if you don't know who I am, my name is John. I've been with Marketing Experiments for nearly 9 years now. It's almost, was that a decade? So it's been quite a while. I've spent a number of years out on the floor doing research with real companies, real marketing dollars with real risk. And I've had the privilege to see a lot of success and to see a lot of learnings with the customers. And my passion is to actually share these learnings and my experience with you. But it's not just me today. I also have a colleague. I'm going to skip a couple slides ahead. I've got Ben Huppert's here. He's a senior manager of research and strategy at the Mech Labs Institute. I'm really excited to have Ben here. Ben and I have actually worked with each other on a couple of research projects. There was one really big one that we worked on together. We had a lot of fun. We learned a lot about the customer. And so I'm really glad to have Ben here. He's going to stick around also at the end for a little bit of live optimization. We're going to actually look at your pages, look at your marketing collateral, and apply the principles that we've learned and the kind of principles that we've been learning to your pages so that you can actually do something with your stuff as well. If you're not familiar with our format, let me invite you to check out Twitter. We are at #WebClinic. We actually have a whole team standing by watching Twitter. We also have GoToWebinar. You have the Q&A function. I'm going to be asking you regularly to participate. I need your help. I can't do this. Ben can't do this. The whole team, we can't really make this an effective use of your time without your participation, without your help. So please, we encourage you to use those. If I can't answer your question, I can actually see the Q&A as it comes up. But if I can't answer it right away as we're presenting, we've got a whole team ready to help answer questions as well. Now, if you've been to, some of you who are on this webinar have probably been to some of our clinics before, and they usually run about 35, 40 minutes. For this particular clinic, we're actually going to run an entire hour because it's going to take that long to go through all the discoveries and to make sure we cover them in great detail. So, without further ado, let's get to the discoveries, let's get to the takeaways so that you can actually start using some of these things with your marketing. Let's start with the first one. We're going to start with discovery number 1. Now, let's take a look at the first illustrative experiment that I mentioned to you earlier in the webinar. This is a company offering dieting programs and memberships. You think of a subscription offering. Imagine there are a lot of subscription offerings today for all kinds of different services, all kinds of different interests. This happens to be one of them. There's a very large community of people interested in this content, and they're willing to pay for it. So this is one of those pages that's inviting somebody that has shown some interest to actually join and to subscribe. So the question in this particular experiment was which use of video will generate the highest conversion rate. We're actually taking a look at a particular element on the page. So let's take a look real quick. So here's the original offer page. Now, we've actually put it on a video screen because this is the first thing that people would see on their screen. We want to try and recreate the customer experience for you. So there's the original, and I just want you to take a look at it, kind of get a sense of the copy. So it looks very much like an article, right? But it's putting a lot of weight on the video, okay? That's just something I want you to know. I mean, a lot of that content is weighted in the video, so they're hoping and expecting people to watch it. Now, let's take a look at the few different treatments that were tested. Here's the treatment A. And as you can see, now the video is actually the same, even though it may look different. It was the way the screenshots were taken, but it's the exact same video, okay? So I don't want you to think about the video. necessarily in that screenshot, but look at everything that's there. Now let's take a look at another version, treatment B. Now let's take a look at the third and final version against it that was tested, treatment C. Now I'd like to ask you guys a question. For those of you that have not seen this test already at some point this year, which version do you think produced the greatest conversion rate? Now I'm standing by to watch the Q&A. I'm looking, so I'm going to wait too. I'm seeing B, I'm seeing C from James. Jennifer says B. Aaron says C, very good. Okay, I'm watching your responses come in. A lot of B's and a lot of C's. Okay? Somebody said the control. Thanks, Anita. you never know, guys. You know, sometimes we learn something with the control, right? I've got Eric who says A, so I've got like one A and the rest of it's B and C. Okay? So now the question is this: which one actually produced the greatest response? And keep in mind, if you've actually seen this on Facebook, you might not be getting the winning version because they're constantly testing, right? What was the result? Version A had the greatest pull. For those of you that answered version B and C, it's okay. You still saw a difference. Version C, your confidence level is a little bit low there, but if you chose version B and version A, for sure, you're definitely going to see a statistically significant difference. The big question that I have is why? What was it about version A or even version B or all of the treatments that actually made a difference? Let's go through that process really quick. Now I'm showing you, I've got two questions I want to ask you. The first question is this: take a look at all those three. What common thing did the three treatments do in different ways to change the customer experience? This is where you're going to put your interpretation eyes on, okay? So if you're here with us and you're an analyst, you're trying to figure out what was the common denominator. Why is it that all of them seem to get a positive difference with only one just barely missing the confidence mark? Had we run the test a little bit longer, it probably would have. So Eric says it's the human element, okay? Fred, what do you say? Different video screenshot. Now, let's keep in mind that actually the video was the same, so perhaps it was the screenshot. What else? So that's a good point, Fred. Anybody else? I'm listening. Take your time, guys. This is not going to be a rushed clinic. We need your participation. This is where you're going to learn. What was the common denominator? No exercise. Thank you, Mike, except that the control. Okay, so it did emphasize, okay, but it really didn't emphasize it that much more, but that was a good guess. Video screenshot, no one wants to work out, says Carlos. The social element beneath the video, okay. So do you guys, I've got you looking. Visible face on screen, says Bob. Very good. All right. So let's kind of, let me give you a clue now. You'll notice, I think Bob hit it something really important. He said that there's this visible face on every one. And notice that we had to blur the face to make it anonymous. Why do you think we had to do that? Was that just a stock picture? No, that's not a stock picture. That's a spokesperson, okay? That's why we had to blur the face out. So that should tell you something. And also take a look at the text, okay? Did you read the text? Is a certified nutritionist and the creator of. So now you've got text describing the person, okay? The common denominator that I see, everyone, is that the three treatments are trying to bring more attention to the fact that this isn't just content, it's content by somebody, some celebrity spokesperson who has some form of credibility, okay? And they're bringing a little bit more attention to it by using her face, her image, and by also a little bit more copy. Now the next question is this: why did treatment A, what was it that treatment A do that was different than B and C? Okay? If you're struggling, take a look at treatment A and B. Just compare those two. What was it that it did differently? I'm going to give you another minute, just another couple seconds. Nancy says it's easier to read. Interaction-rich content at the top of the ad copy. Order of the elements, says Bryce. Presentation is at eye level. Okay. So video in the center, says Heather. Okay. You guys see where we're going, right? So this is something I can say that no one person could really truly predict. but you all are kind of going in the same direction, which is this. It's really about this idea of authority, okay? The big kind of takeaway in this test and a lot of different tests that we're seeing is this impact of immediate authority. And the thing about treatment A that was different is that it didn't give you too much authority before the main content, but it didn't give you too little authority before the main content. Let's go back a slide. Now take a look at the control. I wish I could use a pointer here, but I can't. But on the control, it goes straight into the content, 5 foods to never eat, and then it gives you the video, and then it tells you. So there's really, and there's hardly any emphasis on the creator. You go to version C, they're still getting you straight in the content, but now the creator is there in somewhat visible fashion. And then you look at A and B, and all of a sudden now there's a lot more emphasis before the content on the creator. It kind of brings me to that point that when it comes to content marketing, and I know a lot of you are involved in it, I cannot tell you how much content marketing has sprung up over the last couple of years. And it seems like everybody is now into it. Everybody's got to be writing content. I see Jay Bear starting the storytelling blog, okay? Because now he needs another, people are into it and they're trying to figure it out. But one of the big takeaways that we're seeing, especially in the last 12 months, is this necessity for immediate authority, okay? The idea that content isn't free. There may not be a cost financially for somebody, but they're always weighing their time for this particular option rather than another, okay? So here's a good question from Alicia. What if I can't get an authority figure? That's an excellent question. That's a very good question. I'm going to show you with a cross-reference example. Remember I told you we were going to do that? Well, here's one that you can find literally by going to this URL in the top right corner. Now, I don't normally go to tests outside because I don't necessarily have the ability to look at the data and to certify it. But this is a classic example of somebody that had an article, how we got 1,000+ subscribers from a single blog post in 24 hours. And you know what they did? All they did was they added a story before the exact same content. So take a look here. All they did was they pushed that content down, okay? And what was the result of that? A significant increase in engagement. But was it the story that made the difference? Or was it something buried within the story? I would argue, based on the research that we've done in story, that it wasn't necessarily the story that did it. It was the content of the story. If you read it, everything that person's about to tell you has significantly more credibility, right? Significantly more credibility. You now begin to believe that maybe the things that they're about to tell you actually can be believed. And if you think about it, that's not so far-fetched, right? How often do we come across, let's just say you're sick, okay? You're sick and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. Are you going to go to the first site and you're going to look at them and see what they say and you're going to stop there, or are you going to go to the Mayo Clinic? What is it that the Mayo Clinic has that there's some authority there? Or maybe you go to another site, but maybe they have more specificity. Or maybe they tell you how they got to their results faster or quicker. My point to you is this, is that authority is important. And it's not just achieved through a spokesperson. It's not just achieved through somebody that's well known. It can be achieved through multiple things, okay? Storytelling is one of those things, can help give you credibility if you have the right story and you tell the right things, okay? Sometimes you can get credibility through talking about how you came to the conclusion. You could say, in order to write this article, we interviewed 26 people. I remember participating in one article. I think his name was Trey. I can't remember. He asked me to participate in this article where he had 26 SEO experts to help him try and figure out maybe the top 3 things that somebody should be doing in SEO. But it wasn't the fact, it was the fact that he asked 26 different experts, had their faces, had their names, their experience. That gave it immediate credibility. And that made me want to read it, actually, right? So when we talk about this necessity for immediate authority, don't just think about public figures. I want you to think about the idea of building authority and building it fast, okay? This has been kind of a tried and true speaking principle and teaching principle and presenting principle for many years, but we're seeing it more and more and more as an issue in content marketing, and we want you to pay attention to it. Does this make sense, everybody? Does this kind of does this help you kind of understand where we're going? Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. So let's continue on to the next discovery. What's your actionable takeaway here? Is before you post a piece of content, before you go down that content marketing road, make sure you give enough attention, not too much, not too little, to some kind of content that's going to build your authority, that basically will give them a reason to continue. It's not just the poll, but it's also the credibility. So don't ignore the credibility. Make sure you address it, and you address it early. Let's go to discovery number 2. Now, for discovery number 2, I'd like to start by asking you a question. Given this particular homepage, which we've blurred out significant elements, we're trying to protect the partner here, what would you do first? What would you test first? What would you test out of all the things that you've got here? If they're trying to get more clicks, they're trying to get more engagement, what would you test? What would you change? Bob says declutter. Okay, that's an excellent. Keith is like, whoa, that's pretty busy. So I'm guessing you and Bob are together, right? You want to declutter. Okay, what else? Okay, Amanda's saying the same thing, but she's saying that she wants to do it to reduce anxiety. Okay, what else would you guys do? What would you change? What else would you test? I'll give you just another 10 or 15 seconds. I want you to think. Okay, Henrique says the headline. Bryce is thinking maybe the value prop. Okay, Nancy is changing the typeface and the color of the button. Okay, very good. We've got remove the hashtag follow your. You've got give me a clear statement of who you are and why I should care. Rich is saying, I don't know if this is for me. Let's just start over, right? So you guys are all thinking, these are all good ideas, I think, right? And these are the kind of common things that we would have. And one more, James says move the offer to the center. Okay? But let me show you something, that an unusual thought, an idea that one of our researchers had that kind of helps us to see something that we may have been ignoring for a long time as marketers. Here's the background. This is a tourism commission. They're trying to increase visitor engagement. You got that. Back to the question, what was it that the research team decided to do? They had all of this canvas to choose from. You know what they decided to do? They decided to optimize the navigation. Are you kidding me, John? Really? Of all the things that you could do, you're going to start with the navigation? Well, let me tell you something. They looked at the data. They tried to understand what content was most attractive, because this is one of those sites where it's really built upon the idea of attracting somebody through content, through articles, and through interesting things. You're trying to get somebody to go to a city, right? Well, they came up with this idea. They said, what if the navigation, because it's so cluttered, you guys got it, right? Remember how there's so much clutter? Because it's so cluttered, what would happen if we actually optimized the area that they would go to immediately because they didn't know where to start? What if there's a group of people there that's where they're trying to figure out what to do? So this is what would happen. You'd scroll over the navigation and you get all of these additional links. So they said, okay, let's work here, right? And so they created this was two different treatments out of a series, I think, of 5 or 6 in the test protocol. Okay, these were kind of the two kind of bedrock treatments, and there were slight variations after that. But they had a hypothesis about, number one, simplifying the navigation, reducing the number of top links, changing the color, and then when you scroll over it, remember with the mouse, what they would see. Treatment A is very simple. Literally, it would only show you just a couple of links. And then treatment B would be kind of an attempt. You see this a lot with a lot of these big e-commerce sites nowadays. They'll try and give you like ads and stuff within the navigation, right? So they were thinking, maybe that's how we can reach them. Well, what was the result of all that? Did that even get them anywhere? The result was this. Actually, treatment A, just optimizing the navigation itself, increased the click-through rate by 35%. But here's the best part. The whole reason for existence for the site was leads. 35% increase compared to the control. So as you can see, the big kind of really interesting takeaway I would say here is the thing that we all missed at the very beginning. It's the idea that navigation may actually be more important, something more important to pay attention to, especially when we want to get initial engagement, right? It's not enough to have good content in the page. What if we're at a point where it's so cluttered? We've got to actually optimize how they move through that content. Especially if you've got like a news site or a site with a lot of information, that's probably the first place that they're going to go, right? And what's interesting is that this isn't the only place that I've seen this. It's starting to get more and more steam. We're starting to see more and more of this. I actually ran a test not too long ago. Some of you who have been with us for a long time may remember this. But I want you to take a look at the left. I want you to take a look at the right. The two primary differences, if you were to sum it up, bar color and things like that, and the testimonial was actually at the bottom of the other one on the left, it's just cut off. The two primary differences is the form and the navigation. Why did we take the navigation away? Well, turns out is that people are going straight to price based on our study of analytics. And I was thinking, okay, if we're one of the most expensive of the industry and they're going straight to price, how am I going to justify our existence? How am I going to give us a chance to be heard? Get rid of the navigation and then put all the necessary information sequentially on the page. The result of this test was a 548% increase in conversions. I did a follow-up test after this to see how much of that was due to the form being changed, and I discovered that half of that increase, the 200-some% of it, was due to the form, and the other 200 was due to the navigation. And then I took that learning to their homepage, took away the navigation, sequenced all the information, including the price, on the page, and I got a 90% increase in leads without changing the form. The point was this. We stopped for once and actually said, where are visitors going? What are they doing despite all the stuff that we have on the page? And how can we interrupt that? I love it was Dan Ariely. He was at one of our conferences recently, and he talked about this idea of what hackers do. What hackers do is they go in and they break lines of code. They break sequences, right? And he talked about this idea of changing people's behaviors, that you almost have to go in and hack a process. You almost have to go in and get in between this road that they all take. And one of the things that I'm constantly seeing more and more is this idea of, because pages are getting cluttered, because there's so much content to read, because there's so much to process, the navigation is rising in its prominence. So it's not enough to just throw up a navigation, put about us, put this, put that, but you need to have a very intentional navigation. It doesn't necessarily mean you take it away, and it doesn't necessarily mean you keep it there, but it means whatever you put there, make sure that that is part of the path that you want them to go down to become a customer. So if you know that you're more likely to get customers if they go down these 4 different paths, that's your navigation. That's it. Don't put all this extra stuff. Don't put all of this other things. Just actually take the time and try to put in just the things that you know are going to help move them closer to making that decision. Okay? James makes a very good point. James says it's also geared around the buyer personas. You know what? You're very right. We've done multiple tests where sometimes you have different products in the navigation. Sometimes you have different stages in the buying process, like here I'm just browsing, here I'm comparing, here I'm ready to purchase, and sometimes you have personas. But the point is that you need to use it strategically, because more people are looking to that navigation as a way to escape from all the clutter and all the content that we're constantly feeding them day in and day out. I mean, it's just a complete overload. Use it strategically. We're seeing more and more of that as a tactic and as a way to find, found money or found engagement. Do you have any other questions related to this discovery? Otherwise, I think we're going to move to discovery 3, and we're going to bring Ben up for this discovery. Ben, why don't you come on up here? Let me scroll down. I'm going to hand you the thing. Ben, we've got a couple of tests here, really interesting. Why don't you walk us through it, and then let's talk about the discovery.
Sure, absolutely. And in this discovery, we're actually staying with tourism. We just looked at an example, but this time what we're going to do is look at open rates in an email. So again, we're looking at a regional marketing commissioner. They're looking to bring people into their city.
Right.
And so what they do is they send out an email once a month,
right.
and they try to attract tourism. So this was their original subject line for November, and it says, "Are you a fall foodie? See what's going on in Boston this November." And I want to caveat it is not Boston. We had to anonymize this particular
Right. So
one.
it's some city.
But let's imagine it is
Right.
Boston.
That, you know, yeah.
That was actually the original subject line that our team looked at. And before I actually move on, I actually kind of want to see what our audience has to say and what they might actually do to the subject line in order to.
That's really good.
And whether or not they would click on it.
Audience, what do you guys think? Is it good enough? How would you make it better? Well, Christina says way too long. Okay. Bob says eliminate the question.
All good.
Okay. What else?
Question.
Amanda's saying the same thing. Not always a good idea to have a question in the subject line. Amy's saying the same. Nobody likes the question, Ben.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So actually very interesting because this is actually the subject line our team has then created. And it says clam chowder, lobster rolls, and more, calling all foodies for Boston's best fall fun.
So these are specific things that we all know that they're specific to Boston, but in the actual research partners case, they used specific things that were like known in their region, right?
Absolutely, and yes, absolutely right. So again, we had to anonymize this so it wouldn't be clam chowder and lobster rolls, but whatever is specific to that city and what people would look forward to when they travel to that city. I mean, you can almost taste the clam chowder in your mouth, right?
Right.
Just reading the subject line. So
now this is much longer too than
it
the
is
last
much longer.
one. So
we did get rid of the question.
You're
though.
not very popular here with with some of our audience. So
no, but we did remove the question, and again, we got much more specific with kind of the value that the city has to offer to the tourism board. So here are the two side by side, and again, I kind of want to see what the audience has to think.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't like the question, but maybe it worked better.
And we'll give you just a minute.
Version B.
We've got B's.
We got
We got A for Fred. Okay.
B.
B is making me hungry, you know? Yeah, me too.
That is actually the point. So yes, overall, we saw an open rate increase of 10% for this particular email send. What's actually more interesting and actually a lot more relevant to our partners, we actually saw an increase in click-through rate by 15% as well.
Some kind of a momentum there.
Absolutely. Right. So you could tell we kind of got people excited, maybe even got them hungry. And again, by being more specific in the subject line. We actually ran a second test.
Right.
So this was November, so we wanted to run another one in December. And we figured, hey, what worked in November has to work in December as well, right? I mean, that's the logic that we followed. So we created a subject line that said, holiday shopping, historic tours, Pop's orchestra concerts, and more Boston traditions.
Right, so anonymized again, right?
Again, this is very anonymized, but let's imagine we would go to Boston and would create this for Boston. These are the things that we might want to highlight and get travelers excited to come to the city.
Right.
This time what makes the test interesting is we have this subject line as well that we tested it against, which is book now to save up to 30% on hotel stays in December to Boston.
So we've got an incentive here.
That's right.
So
and quite a good one. I mean, 30% on a hotel is actually it's
like $400 a night.
That's a nice, yeah.
So or, I don't know, 300, 200. So interesting.
Yeah. So again, kind of the same idea from the same test, but yet very different because we have a different test group here. And so again, I'd like to see what our audience has to say about this one. And see what we're going with here. So, A, B.
So we're getting B. Bob is
all right.
Yeah. So does it look like B again? Does it look like everything?
It looks
We've got a couple.
Looks
of
like
A's.
A lot of B's, some A's.
Right.
So it looks like people do like saving on their hotel.
Maybe 70-30. You know, 70 for the discount, and then 30 for. Now it's going up to 40%, so 60-40.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a much more even split than the last one. But. We actually saw very similar results here, much to our surprise as well. We saw a 9% relative difference in open rates, and actually we saw a 26% relative increase this time in click-through rate,
right.
Which it just goes to show how much the value that you offer to a customer actually has plays into the open and the click-through rate.
Right.
And in this case, what was very surprising is that highlighting what the city has to offer and kind of the attractions and what you're looking forward to actually outweighed the incentive in this case, the 30%.
Right. So if we were to kind of wrap that up, go ahead and click 2 slides ahead of me real quick, or one more here. I think if I had to put it in words, and you guys are going to have to forgive me, but if I'm butchering the language here, but if I could sum it up, I would almost say that what's going on here is really a kind of proper specificity. And when I say, now the last test were both a little bit more specific, but the last test kind of shows you what we actually mean by that. So normally, specificity and subject line, what we would teach or what you would see if you've seen us at Connections or Dreamforce, is we would teach that, the more specific, sometimes the less mystery. And because of that, you're going to lose click-through, you're going to lose offer force.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to show you here is that when you are specific about a value proposition that connects to what's important to them, that is kind of the exception to that mystery rule. Whereas notice that the other one was an incentive, and then we have one that's focusing on the value proposition. So it's kind of like there's a kind of proper specificity that you need to use, and listen, guys, length has no bearing. Let me just tell you that right now. In all the tests that I've seen, length is not a factor. Okay, if you write the subject line right. Okay, if it's more specific or it's utilizing this kind of approach, and I think we go into that in a little bit more detail. So if we click on the next slide, and we keep clicking, of course. Here, this one is kind of a bit more cut and dry, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Fall food, it could be vague, and there's some credit though, right? So maybe the foodies know what they're looking for. There's some kind of a value there.
Yeah, I think what kind of makes sense here is if you think about your audience, right? And you think about the value proposition that you bring to that audience, the offer that we bring to that audience. The clam chowder and the lobster rolls is very tangible, and these people signed up for an email list for that specific city, so they expressed interest. So, putting that value in front of them, outweighs a whole lot of different things, and we saw it including a 30% discount on hotels. Right.
So, and that's what we showed on the next slide, right? So it's really, even in the, incentive works. Don't get me wrong, even if it's salesy and ambiguous. But in this case, what we've discovered is that kind of specificity tied to the value proposition is really the key in this case. And so if I were to sum it up in kind of a tactic, one thing that you guys could take away is when you're writing subject lines, you can really take 2 approaches. You can go the mystery approach, where you kind of draw them in. You kind of tie it into something they're interested in, something that's relevant, okay? And you can draw them in, right? You can use the subject line just as a way to get them in. And I hate to use this, but think of clickbait as a primary example. That's using mystery, and that's really exploiting mystery, in my opinion. But what we're saying here is that now there's another tactic, is take your value proposition or something that that they're very interested in, that they signed up in the list for, and use it to lead, but you have to be specific.
Absolutely. And the only thing that I would add to that is put yourself in the customer's shoes, because we're offering a 30% discount on the hotel, but think about going through your email. What is the number one thing that you are probably going to see? Discount over discount over discount over discount. If you finally see something that's of interest, like holiday shopping or historic tours of the city that you've already expressed interest to previously, you might click on that over all of the other advertisements and emails that you have in your inbox. So.
Very good. Well, thanks so much, Ben. We're going to bring you back up for some live optimization.
Sounds good.
But so, are we moving at a good pace, everybody? Very good. Thank you so much for that feedback. We're going to keep moving forward. Let's go to Discovery 4. Okay, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start with kind of an illustrative experiment. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's a think tank soliciting year-end donations to meet the annual fundraising goal. For those of you that follow us regularly, you're going to be familiar with this test, and we brought a special guest in. So don't vote on this if you've seen it. But for those of you that haven't, we want to draw your attention to it. This is somebody trying to get year-end donations. And in fact, you probably have some of these emails in your inbox right now. There are a couple of organizations that I would say are near and dear to my heart that I've been getting emails from for donations, probably because I've donated to them in the past or I've expressed interest. You may have some of these in your inbox right now because they're all trying to kind of get their year-end campaign funding, right? And this is common. Okay, so this is for the nonprofits out there. Here is a nonprofit, here is kind of a conservative group you may be familiar with that's doing their normal year-end support, and they're always sending emails from the founder, okay? And they're conservative, they're political, so there's kind of there's almost kind of an expectation, right? That there's some kind of an expectation of how you should be, which is probably why they've assembled the email like this. They've got the signature, and it's very, very well articulated, very good. But they had a hypothesis. They said, what would happen if we actually turned all of that upside down? What would happen if we sent an email from somebody that they probably don't know, that has a lesser title, that's being more plain, just more down to earth, I guess, friendlier, informal tone? Would that actually hurt? Okay, especially in this conservative arena, right, where some of these things are very important. Well, let me ask you, what do you guys think? If you weren't here, you can vote, but if you saw this, you won't get to play, okay? Bob says B, okay? We've got a lot of B's, okay? We've got a lot of B's. Okay, so here's the thing. You're selecting B, tell me why. Why do you think? Give me one reason why. Okay, I've got Jim who says A. Mike says it's shorter, right? We've got more personal, more real, okay, right? Somebody says A because they don't know Christy. B is personalized versus standard. More casual, closer to what they say on the phone. Conversational, gets to the point. Jim says, hey, it's got to be A because it's formal and more credible. So here's the question that we've got to answer. What is it that the audiences want? What is it that this audience wants? Do they want formal and credible, or do they want casual and conversational, right? Well, this audience wants casual and conversational by about 381%. And it's amazing. It's funny because logic, we didn't come up with the version A as a winner in our minds for a non-logical reason. We thought of it very logically, and I gave you all the reasons why, which is why we have to test. But this isn't the only kind of test that I'm seeing that asks this question of formal, standard, approach versus informal, casual, conversational. I've been seeing a lot of this, especially in the last year or so. And which brings me to this point, is that there's a growing effectiveness of what I would call an everyday tone in email. And I think it has to do with this idea that people still don't buy from websites, they buy from people. They don't want to be marketed to, they want to have a conversation with you, okay? They want to be communicated with. Flint would say, your customers don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with. Okay, and that's what this test is ultimately challenging, okay? Now there are some tests where using a figure or something like that would help, a little bit more formal, but think about email for a minute. Notice that this discovery is specific to email, okay? Email in itself is supposed to be some kind of personal communication tool. People use it to communicate real messages to real people, okay? And when we start deviating away from that, we start missing a kind of expectation, and subliminally we could be dismissed. Let me give you an example of how we made that mistake at Marketing Sherpa. And in fact, let me skip ahead and show you, and then we'll go back. Okay? Here's how we made the mistake. Take a look at the one on the left. All we wanted people to do was participate in a free study, right? That's all we wanted. Okay? It was for an e-commerce study, right? And we were saying we are willing to give away some $600 to $1,000 ticket to the summit. Actually, it's $2,200 value, or an iPad Air. We're willing to spend money so that people will take the survey, right? And we said, well, why not just show the iPad? Why not just show the venue? Why don't we help them to see what they could get? And then somebody said, wait a minute, what would happen if we just actually did a plain old ugly text email with the ugly yellow highlight? Okay? Ugly yellow highlight, that's for real. What was the result? Not only did we get more clicks, but we got significantly more completions. Okay? The hypothesis here, again, is that sometimes, again, people don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with. Right? Let's go back to the previous email and let's examine it in detail. So here we go. The winning email hypothesized and confirmed that this lesser known sender would have more credibility from an email standpoint, not from a company standpoint, because how many of you would honestly believe that the founder of an organization that's probably bigger than the company that you're working with and has got more budget to spend on, is actually going to send you a personal email? Maybe not so much, but definitely more so from Christy. Now we're talking subliminally here. Eventually you're going to wake up, right? But with Christy, you're going to be asleep for a lot longer. The winning email here also uses language, okay? This is kind of like building rapport in person, right? Oftentimes you can build rapport with a person subliminally by matching their body language, by matching their words that they use, by talking on their level, okay? Literally, you could walk next to them, okay? And little things like that build rapport. So what they did is they said, what does this look like in an email? And they started to use that kind of language, okay? Finally, they were very plain about the purpose. This is what we want, and this is what we're going to use it for. There really wasn't much else to it. And if you're sending this email to a group of people that have already signed up, that have already maybe have donated before, or that may already understand what your values are about, maybe you don't need to go into all those values. Maybe you just need to have a conversation with them, a quick conversation. Sometimes, I noticed that sometimes, my wife was involved in a preeclampsia organization, right, because she had gone through that, and she did great, she'd survived it and did great and all that, and now we're trying to support the organization so that we could educate people. And she was running a campaign, and I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to get people to help donate to this thing? And then what I didn't realize is that all I really had to do with my friends was just ask. I didn't really have to explain. I just needed to be clear and conversational about it. Whenever I went into too much detail, it was like, people start thinking I'm trying to sell them or something, right? And that's kind of the takeaway here, is that when you're working in a medium like email, you need to think about the expectations of that medium and the subliminal, and when I say expectations, I say on a subliminal level, okay? When you have a banner ad, it's different, okay? Nobody expects a banner ad to be personal, okay? In fact, they might actually expect it to be kind of creepy because it's showing where you last searched and what you were doing, right? But think about email for a minute, especially as a way to converse with people. Does that make sense, everybody? Let's go to the final discovery that our editorial team kind of drew attention to. And that's number 5. And we're going to, again, start it with an experiment. This is, again, tourism. All right, we've got a lot of great examples there. And here they are, they're trying to get people to sign up for something they can send to them, which will increase their odds of actually going to the city. Okay, here's the control. Take a look at it. Here's the treatment. Just get a glance. I'm going to show them side by side. Okay, it's the same form. You got to see it in a little bit of detail, but I want to point out that the copy is almost virtually the same, with maybe slightly, you got a slight change at the top, okay, but the rest of the body copy is the same, but it doesn't look the same. What would you guys say are the differences of the treatment and the control, other than say maybe the headline, instead of saying free guide, it says official visitor's guide. What would you say are the big changes from one to the other? Okay, the treatment feels more premium, added color. See, this is imagery, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm seeing, right? Drawing the eye to the form, heavy color around the form. Okay, we've got a lot of kind of visual adjustment on the treatment. So we're really not changing much of the content. We're just drawing more attention to certain visual elements. And I just want to reveal to you guys that there was no mystery here. The reason why they did that is to make it more brand compliant. Okay, because that was the font and the color style and the approach that the brand used in all their marketing materials. And I don't know about you, but I get this all the time, especially from owners, because it's funny, the first thing that somebody will decide on when they're starting a business is their logo and their name. It doesn't matter what their value proposition is. It doesn't matter how you're going to create a customer. What's my name going to be and what's my logo going to look like? Because that's special to me. Well, here's an instance where where that kind of is happening on this page. We want to see what happens. So what do you guys think? Does it do anything? Does it hurt? Does it help? Or does it just no difference? What do you guys think? Version A, version B? Bob says it's treatment. Okay? Helps 100%. Treatment, B, helped. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but the treatment actually hurt it by about 34%. No, I can't believe it. So this is going to be a great conversation that you're going to have with your brand ambassador. Okay? But there's... listen, guys, I'm not saying that all branding elements are bad, but there's a genuine discovery here. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at it again. Put on your goggles, your conversion goggles. How is all of the styling, the color, and the emphasis affecting the psychology of the user experience? Control looks easier to complete, says Ken. Thank you. I agree. What else? Okay, here we go. Too expensive to go there, says Anita. Old school says coupon goes on the right side. Okay. Free guide's the first thing you see. B looks like a lot of form fields. Okay. Should have tested with the same top image. Okay, so you guys are seeing, but here's what I'm going to say. If I'm going to put on my experience and my kind of conversion goggles on here, I'm going to tell you that I feel significantly more friction with the treatment. It's harder to read, and it seems like a lot of forms, a lot of cost compared to the value I'm getting subliminally. Okay? Now, if I think about it logically, like I'm working with the company, I'm saying, well, I'm not adding any more form fields. I'm making it look prettier and more professional. But when you put that much emphasis on the thing that they have to do, how does that fare against the thing that they're going to get? I mean, do you guys see where I'm going with this? Here's the takeaway, right? And there's some follow-up testing that needs to be done there. But the takeaway here is that brand standards can actually impact your end behavior for good or for worse. And what we have to do is we have to make sure that the things that we're doing to make us more compliant are actually helping the customer get clarity, okay, to reduce the friction. I mean, I could bring in a font guy and a design guy, and he could tell you all the things wrong with the fonts that they were using in terms of readability. In fact, I learned that there are specific fonts that are much more readable on newspaper than they are on screen. I didn't know that stuff. I had to do this test prompted me to do that kind of research. But that might give some validity to it if we were to run a little bit tighter of a test. Now, listen, branding isn't all that bad. You guys may remember this example if you've seen us before, if you've seen our clinics before. Remember this example? Here we've got on the left, it looks like literally some kind of candy commerce program with the offer built into it. Many of you are stuck in this situation, but what would happen if we actually made it look like the brand owned it? Brand owned that process and built that process, even though maybe they were renting it through this system. Now, it wasn't just this page, it was the entire process. The result of this was 40% increase in subscriptions. Here's my point. I don't want to get into a long and lengthy conversation about brand. We've got a lot of great materials on that. You'll find that we teach that we believe that brand is just the aggregate experience of the customer, okay? Through all of their experiences that they have with you, the aggregate experience in their mind is called brand, okay? I'm not going to get any deeper into it, but what I want to do is get tactical with you. And here's what I want to leave with you. When you're designing your marketing materials, when you're going in and adding all of your brand elements, step back and look at it and say, is it actually helping add value? Is it helping them process it? Is it helping them want to do it? Okay? You'll hear this thing in UX where it's all about can they do it. Well, this is not about can they do it, it's will they do it. And will they do it is based on a lot of things, like how much cost they perceive on the page. It looks like a lot of form fields, when all you have to do is just make it look like it's insignificant, and then they're thinking, oh, no problem. Listen, people process over 60 million bits per second, okay? And they can only consciously process up to 15 to 60 bits, okay? Their subliminal mind is using its power to make decisions for you. And when you look at a page that looks like there's more to do than what you're getting, and you don't maybe get the second screenshot, or you maybe don't get to see the bolded points and all of the bullets, there's got to be some people that are going to miss the things that you're trying to say. Okay? And I get this problem all the time. Okay? I see it all the time. So the takeaway for you guys is this. Don't just make something more compliant because it makes it look prettier. Think about how it's going to affect the psychology of what your customer's experiencing when they're going through the marketing. Make sure that it's helping and not hurting. Does that make sense? Does everybody kind of see where we're going with this point? So let's do a quick review. Okay? We talked about this idea of a media authority, and you don't have to have a spokesperson or a figure. You just need to use things that increase credibility. Stories increase credibility. Showing your work, like your math teacher. They're going to say, how did you get to that answer? If you showed your work, now there's authority behind what you're doing. Or, just keep in mind that people aren't just looking for what you're having to say. They want to make sure that what you have to say is important, not just what you're saying. Okay? Second thing, don't forget your navigation. It's a strategic part of your website and the whole customer thought sequence. Okay? People can experience friction on the navigation just as much as they can anywhere else on the page. And in fact, they go to the navigation when they are honestly having a hard time in the page. So look at that as an opportunity to get more response, get more engagement. Subject lines. Don't dismiss a long subject line if it's specific and it's connected to the value proposition, something that they've expressed interest in. Okay? Test them. Look, don't just use mystery, but also use specificity as it relates to the expression of a value proposition. Okay? You don't have to be persuasive here, you just need to be clear. When you're doing email, don't dismiss the idea of doing something that is more conversational. People are hungry for relevance in email, and I truly believe they're hungry for this sense of this sense of credibility and this sense of like, okay, this is a real email and this is a real person. It needs to feel like that. They're hungry for that. They get so many ads. They're looking for something that was made just for them. Okay, this kind of tone can help them feel that immediately before they even read a single word, or not necessarily a single word, but all the content of the email. And then finally, brand standards. Listen, guys, just because it's part of your brand standards document doesn't mean it's going to help you get conversions, okay? You need to make sure, you need to ask yourself as a human being, as a consumer, does this help me, or does this help me help them come to the conclusion that I want them to come to? Now with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time in going through all this. We've got 5 minutes left. I would like to actually look at your pages. I'd like to bring Ben back up. Let's take a look at your pages. Let's actually apply some of this stuff to your marketing so that you can do some takeaways. But real quick, one thing. You guys, at the very beginning of the presentation, we had a call for research partners. We do this usually at the end of the year. If you're looking for an opportunity to basically work with our researchers, we really encourage you to explore it. I've had a lot of fun and I've learned a lot by that experience. So if you're interested, I just want to draw your attention to that before we go into it. But let's now go into live optimization. So here I've got Ben back up with me. Hey, thanks for coming back up, Ben.
Sure.
We've got health enhancement systems. I don't know who it's from specifically, but it looks like this looks like a landing page, or this looks like kind of like a home page,
Yeah, it's
right?
like a home page.
Okay, so I'm guessing that your goal is to get somebody to actually maybe sign up for our email, click deeper into the site. You're just looking for engagement. So Ben, I'm going to ask you just looking at the page, okay, this is from Sean, looks like it's from Sean actually, thank you team. Just looking at this page, what's the top thing that comes to your mind? Just one thing that they're doing well, and then what's one thing that you think that they might want to test or they might want to look at improving or changing?
Yeah, so as far as doing well, first of all, I love the concept of what they're offering here. It's kind of a wellness program. They're trying to make it fun within corporations for people to live a healthier lifestyle, which is awesome.
Right.
And they actually have a lot of, they have quotes on here, and they have, you can see some fun imagery. So they're kind of reinforcing, we just talked about brand, but that it's fun to live a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
However, with that being said, I think this is a great product, but it doesn't necessarily, the clarity isn't there.
Right.
You actually just said it. You're not really sure what they're trying to do here on this website.
It's subliminal just kind of came out. Sorry, guys.
And I was actually wondering the same thing when I had just looked at it. And it's interesting that, again, we have a great product, but really making sure that you articulate your value proposition very clearly on the page. What's interesting here is you kind of have two prospect groups, right?
Right.
One is the people, the employees that you want to get on board on signing up for such a program and living a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
But this site seems to be aimed more towards the corporations, and so you really have to ask yourself, what's the value to them? And right or wrong, a lot of corporations obviously think about ROI and investments and things like that. There's not a lot of that on this page of what are the benefits for me as an organization. So you could talk about the increase in productivity that it might have.
Engagement. It's a big word in that.
You're building a stronger community within your corporation. Maybe your health care goes down. I don't know, but what are the value points that for your prospect group that you're trying to message to?
Right.
Figure that out and really clearly articulate that, because I think we have a great product here, and we just need to tighten up the messaging a little bit.
So let's make this really tactical. So what I might do is taking kind of Ben's advice, right, and looking at the site. You've got the navigation up there. I noticed that the navigation doesn't really help me go deeper. It just shows maybe products and blog. But the first thing, you've got a decent template, but the rotating banner, it doesn't stay on any one of them long enough. And we've tested against that. And sometimes that's one of those things that can hurt if you don't manage it just right. Okay, so if you do a static introduction with a headline, subheadline, I think you need to say, what is it that they can accomplish here? Where am I at? Okay, I'm at Employee Wellness Systems. What can I do here? That's the first thing I need, and you need to emphasize it in your headline. Get X. Maybe the site is an informational site. Get over 1,000 or over 1,000 articles on how to increase employee engagement right here. Start browsing. Or maybe it's what you do, but you need to articulate that right away, okay? Because right now I'm seeing articles, and you know what? Maybe this is just an article site. Maybe this is just a free ways to increase engagement in your company. You need to say that, okay? Now I'm seeing products. Your products allow me. I'm confused in which one you are, just by even the way that you've put your site together. So use that introduction, the headline, subheadline, intro paragraph, and maybe some kind of a button or call to action. Help me understand what I can do there and why I should do it. If you do that one thing, I promise you, I think you're going to get a significant increase in engagement. And then you can start looking at navigation and other things. Okay? Anything else you want to point out, or should we just go to another one real quick? Because I know we're running short on time.
Let's move on.
Let's do one more. Okay? Let's do North American Waterway. Okay? So right away, audience, you're still with us. Tell me one thing that you would change. What's one thing that's just you would change? This is from Kathy, it looks like. So let's take a look at, audience, you've got the challenge now, and Ben, think about the one thing that you would change, or maybe the top two things that you would adjust or think about testing. So audience, Aaron is saying no idea what they do without too much reading. James is saying, hey, I'm glaring, sign up at the top. Ken is like, hey, simplify. Henrique, make it a 21st century design, okay? So he's talking about credibility here. Specifics of value, says Bryce. Let's do a couple more. I'm waiting for you. Let's do, okay, give me a headline that tells me who you are. Very good. And one more, move the stressed message up to the top. Okay, so let's scroll up to the top, guys, and let's take a look. Ben, your top 2 things. What do you say?
I honestly think the audience nailed it. I would start with a headline. The first thing that we're asking people to do is sign up to receive special discounts. At this point, I have no idea what this product even is.
Right.
Now, keep in mind, I don't know where where the traffic's coming from.
That is a very good
Maybe
point.
they have been exposed to something beforehand, but let's assume this is a homepage and people Google,
Yes.
boating supplies or boating canvases, and they come to this page. I still don't know, again, where I am and why I should buy from you rather
Right.
than anybody else. And so make sure that's very clear before you ask people for the information. I do think imagery could have a huge impact here. There are a lot of images on this site, but having high quality images
Right.
has shown to have significant increases in e-commerce situations.
Right.
While this is not quite e-commerce, because I believe just from browsing around a little bit, they're custom, so it's a little bit more of a complex sale, but
Right.
the imagery is very, very important, and it's what sells your products if it's a
Right.
good product. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't start out with a sign up unless they really know you really well and you've already had a conversation with them literally in person and they're just going to your site to find information that you've already given them.
yeah,
I mean, and this might look like a local situation, but if it's not a local situation, if you got a market greater than your zip code, you're definitely going to need to start with a conversational format: headline, subheadline, introduction, text. We've got templates. We've got a whole clinic on templates. You need to start with one of those templates, and then you can go right into those things. Like, listen, if you only did one thing, if you could only do one thing, okay, and you found one of those like landing page editors, like one of those things where you can literally make changes, get rid of that sign up, move it somewhere, maybe move it below the 3 boxes, and then put a headline, a subheadline, introduction. Let them know where you're at, what you can do, and why you should do it, right there at the top, so that they can understand it. Okay. Again, and then here's the thing. Even for your navigation, you've got the store, blog, customer testimonials, about us, contact. You could use that as a way. You could say, instead of that, you could do. You could talk about, we sell canvases, enclosures, covers. Like I haven't looked at the site, so I don't know.
Right.
But there's probably a better. I'm one of those guys. I look at that, I'm like, okay, navigation, and now I'm left. Store, and I'm starting all over again. So look for our templates. We've got a whole web clinic on templates. We did a couple years ago. Look for that web clinic. There's going to be a template in there, I think, that you can use that gets you started. But that's probably the first thing that I would do is let's make this page more conversational. Yeah. Let's actually have those things that we mentioned.
I agree.
Well, it looks like it is 5:00 something here in Florida. And listen, guys, I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your trust. We really appreciate you giving us the full hour as opposed to the 35 minutes. Again, I just want to re-emphasize to you that if you are interested, these kind of experiments come from real partnerships with our analysts, with our scientists, to ultimately help you basically fund our research through found money. I mean, that's it. You basically get conversion lifts and customer insights, and
we have a lot of fun while we do it.
We get to have a lot of fun. We get to get research, and we get to help other people anonymously, not giving any competitive advantage here. So if you're interested, please check it out. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you, it looks like, next year.